Yeah, hi, this is Mark McCloskey.
Oh, wow. Thank you for taking the call. My name's Daryl McClanahan. I live here in Missouri.
Oh,
I,
nice to meet you. How you doing?
all right. I missed hearing you speak over here in Vernon County, Missouri at 4th of July. Uh,
It's a good event. I like.
uh-huh. Uh, I had a incident happen in front of my house about a year or two ago, maybe just right around the time your incident happened. And I am a pro Second Amendment Missourian, and I follow the news a lot. And trying to get some help, these gentlemen, uh, we were selling our house and there was a property line dispute, and they set up a firing range across from our house and fired guns at pictures of me and the police. And there's even a police report where he says, "Yeah, I shoot at pictures of Daryl," and law enforcement said it's okay. And I have a video on my YouTube channel, and it's only about a minute long. And at this shooting range a couple years ago, this gentleman comes out from behind the truck and he says, "I don't know who you are. You've done pissed me off." And he has an AR-15 in his hand, and he waves the AR-15 towards my home. And he says, "I don't know who you are. You've done pissed me off." And then he walks in front of the truck and he fires the weapon. And to me, that's a misuse of firearms in Missouri. And because these guys are good old boys and the neighbors, and I videotaped many incidences of them firing weapons. And there was, I follow a lot of gun channels, and when you pled guilty to the misdemeanor, a lot of people didn't like that. And I followed what happened with the disciplinary thing. I think that's unfair because once you do the crime, you've served your time. I think if you're a non-violent felon, you should probably receive some of your rights back. The government takes too many people's rights away, and especially with firearms. So you were criticized a lot for taking that plea because people said that it was reckless, that our guns are not to intimidate people. People don't show up the police don't show up at your house with a gun to intimidate you. They show up with a gun to defend themselves. They show up with a weapon to defend themselves. And you and your wife were defending yourselves. People criticize how you held the guns, what you did. I was always armed at my home, and the sheriff told me they were trying to provoke me into brandishing the weapon, and I would have been charged. I'm not a good old boy. I have a big mouth. I have an opinion. And could you take the time to look at the 1 minute video and see if you could be of any help?
In what way?
Well, I would say for fairness that you were charged for defending your home, and these men are not charged for intimidating me and my family with firearms. They clearly were breaking the law. You, in my opinion, and I think the public opinion, you were clearly defending your property.
Were you anticipating a civil suit against them for
Yes, tortious interference as well as creating a nuisance. And I have lots of video of there was no firing range when I put the house up for sale. They mowed the grass down and put a firing range directly across from my house. They would leave flyers in my mailbox with pornographic images. They would drive by at all hours of the night and shoot weapons down the road. I would call the police. They would come. "Oh, there's no one around." At one point, the gentleman sitting across the driveway from my house with an AR-15 and a Bowie knife glistening in the sun. We tried to get a protection order. They refused to give us a protection order. He brought his 40-year brother-in-law, Philadelphia attorney, who argued, "He's just exercising the Second Amendment." I asked him, "What were you doing with the Bowie knife?" "Oh, I was whittling wood." And they clearly intimidated, and then I get my front door kicked in for posting a YouTube video. They put flyers up and down the road saying my wife is the best cocksucking whore in Ozark County. So I put a video up saying these boys are hypocrites. Their wives are the best cocksucking whores. And I didn't say that, but I said these boys are hypocrites. Their wives are XXX. The prosecutor has them kick my door in, and I'm charged with 2 felony harassments, which I waived the preliminary if they would be dropped to misdemeanors. I wrote that on the waiver of preliminary hearing, and they refiled them as felonies, and they aren't honoring their performance of their contracting. And I'm getting nothing but screwed around. I've moved over here to Vernon County. My wife took a better job. I'm a stay-at-home father, and we lost the sale of that home, and we lost a lot of money. But even if you can't help me with any of that, I think the guy waving the firearm in front of my house clearly shows someone whose intent is to intimidate me and my family with a firearm, and he's not charged. And when the sheriffs came, he told me, he said, Daryl, those guys aren't going to hurt anyone. They're just trying to intimidate you.
Well, unfortunately, you can't cause the prosecutor to prosecute anybody they don't want to prosecute.
Sure.
They have discretion to do that. As far as a civil action, with my Senate campaign, I'm really not taking on any new cases.
Sure.
The anticipation is going to be that I'm going to be sworn in as a senator on January the 3rd, 2023, and then I have to stop practicing at that point completely. So I'm not really taking on anything new. Let me tell you a little bit about what we did and why we did it. When Kim Gardner, our Soros-appointed prosecutor, charged us with felonies, and we raised the castle doctrine as an affirmative defense, what most people don't realize is that the castle doctrine in Missouri is not a bar to prosecution. The state still gets to prosecute you. You just get to raise the castle doctrine as a defense. Then the jury decides both of those issues. In the city of St. Louis, with the jury that would be my likely jury in that case, it'd be a national media free-for-all. I'd get a jury of people that did not necessarily want to treat me particularly fairly. And if we then had to go to trial on the issue of A, were we guilty of these felonies, and B, were we acting in self-defense? Although some court of appeals down the road may have fixed the thing eventually, I suspect we would have been found guilty, and they would not have found in favor of our self-defense argument just because of the bias of the potential jurors.
Do you know about the Fully Informed Jury Association?
So the game plan was this: the governor wanted to pardon us from the get-go, but under Missouri law, the governor can't pardon you unless you've actually been found guilty of something. He can't stop the prosecution. He can only fix it afterwards. And so we had Kim Gardner tossed off the case because of her bias. She took that up to the Court of Appeals and lost, then took it up to the Supreme Court and lost, so making good law for us and bad law for her. And then the new prosecutor comes on board, and he reads me a charge that says that I purposely place other people in apprehension of imminent physical injury. And I laughed out loud. I said, I sure as hell did. That's what the guns were for. If that's a crime in Missouri, I did it, and I'll do it again.
It's the legal terminology that the common man doesn't understand, and the apprehension would be when people feel uncomfortable around law enforcement or whatever. And I think something that could be this is my opinion, that could be a great plus to your campaign is I've met Eric Greitens when he was governor. I happened to be walking around the Capitol with my children, and he got on the elevator, and I gave him a card for a prison ministry. There's a gentleman here in Missouri who was shot by the Missouri Highway Patrol. His name was Jeffrey Winehouse, and he videoed it. And I think the one thing that Black Lives Matter has right is accountability in police. And we have all the rah Republicans who are all, which I support law enforcement, and we need police and not an anarchical society that's what the communists want. And these people should be teaching their people jury nullification. I recently gave one of my flyers to a prosecutor, and he said he didn't like it because you could go against the judge's oath by morally. You could vote as a Christian. They often used to use marijuana or prostitution. I'm sure you know about jury nullification. The courts don't like it if you say they control the juries. The prosecutors have way too much power with the immunity on the accountability. But Josh Hawley hid exculpatory evidence when he was attorney general. This trooper was fired for being defective, and he had told his psychiatrist that the next person that pulled their gun out or pulled their wallet out too quick, he was going to shoot. And Jeffrey was a journalist who was making a lot of noise in Franklin County, Missouri. He's called the Bulletin Man. For years he did the newspaper, that he passed out, and he was shot and he's sentenced to 30 years. And the governor that pardoned you, there was a black man in Kansas City who had 40 years, or he'd been in jail 40 years maybe, a very long time. And the prosecutors that prosecuted him back in those days said, we made a mistake. The new prosecutors said, we made a mistake. They took it to Governor Parsons, and he said, I'm going to let the courts, instead of where he stepped in for you, he didn't step in for that guy. And the courts did eventually overturn his thing. And this officer who shot Jeffrey messed up evidence, and a guy spent 12 years in jail. And Henry Folsom and Scott Mertens is still an investigator. There was also a young man bounced out of the boat at Lake of the Ozarks and drowned, and they wanted to cover it up, but one good officer stepped up, and they tried to fire him and railroad him out of his retirement, and they gave him his retirement because they said, let's cover it up, and he said, we killed that man. And they were, the troopers were on there saying, oh, the dad wants us to go get him tonight. He won't be any more dead tomorrow. Troopers are on recording saying, it's Jeffrey Winehouse. Oh, we know him. He's messing with the police again, messing with us. So accountability, Eric Greitens is not going after any, he wants accountability for the prosecutor that did. I think it's the same prosecutor that prosecuted you, that prosecuted him.
Yep.
And I liked him as a governor, but I mean, you bring his name up around my wife, she's totally offended because of his immoral actions. I mean, even if it wasn't, it's like that wording of the apprehension. I mean, what he was doing in the bedroom is his own business, and I'm like a don't ask, don't tell. I don't want them reading to my kids in the library and things. So I'm very much for your private life is your private life. That's a libertarian idea. But you mention his name, and I think if people mention your name, you're like, oh, the guy that was in front of his house with a gun. And if there was any way to bring attention to my case, where the guy's name is Mark Thrift, who was waving the gun. He owns a bunch of land down around where we lived, and also Ron Steely, the road that we lived on, was named after the guy. And at one point there, their truck, at another incident, when I was getting deputies to come out and collect flyers, they come up to our truck where we're waiting while my wife's breastfeeding. They show up, and I think they were trying to scare us off so the police wouldn't collect the flyers they put up on the road, but the police did collect them. And we've had a handwriting analysis done from a lady in Texas that identified the handwriting on a crazy protection order that was put against us. It wasn't ever in effect. The guy didn't show up, but he wrote a bunch of craziness that I'm a big mouth stay-at-home mom, things like this. But the handwriting on that order matches the handwriting on the flyers that are very filthy, and I mean, they put pictures of me that they took from the internet, and they stood out there and shot at them. And if that's not a scary idea, accountability for the good old boy. We're supposed to have equal justice under the law, and too often it's who you know, or and Governor Parsons pardoned 22 people last year and then sealed the names, and many people suspect that those may have been campaign type people or people with connections, and not the regular guy like Jeffrey, who got railroaded. And he was wearing a spy watch. They made a bunch of faulty statements, and then two or 3 weeks later, after he was shot, it came out that he was wearing one of these early Google watches that recorded everything. And the statements are perjurous that the troopers made, and people at the gas station said it looked like an execution. He was called out there to meet to pick up his computers, and it's a really important story. He's a white guy, and I mean, that's just, I hate to go, everyone always goes the racial thing. Oh, you're a white guy with a gun out in front of your house, scaring the poor black people. Jeffrey's a big mouth white guy, and he needed to shut up. The troopers shut him up, and it's all swept under the rug when there were a lot of mistakes. And accountability is, I think, what people in the whole country want. We have to have a government to run everything, but people want their freedom. You look at what's going on in Canada. I don't vaccinate my children. We're not vaccine people. We don't believe in abortion. We think putting aborted, if there's any chance that these Project Veritas showed that there may be aborted babies in these vaccines, how can you force another person to put aborted babies in their body? Even if you think it's a woman's, the whole country shifted. I'm 54. When I was a kid, it's a woman's choice. It wasn't discussed. You look at the whole country. It doesn't matter, black, white, who you are, people know abortion is not a birth control and that it's murder. And so my YouTube channel is Missouri Battle Flag. I've been charged.
Hang on 1 second.
Okay.
Write it down.
I appreciate you listening to me very much.
Missouri Battle Flag.
And it's a YouTube channel, and if you just go to Crazy Neighbors, there's a playlist, Crazy Neighbors, and you'll see unlawful use of a firearm. And you'll see this guy appears out by his truck, and I'm filming from an upstairs bedroom, and it's about 1:30, and he basically says he doesn't know who I am, but you've done pissed me off. He waves the AR-15 in my direction. He doesn't point it at my house, but he waves it. He presents his arm, and then he goes around the front of the truck and he fires the weapon multiple times. This would be like you being in my kitchen and say, you've done pissed me off, and I pick up a butcher knife and I stab the table. You know, I mean, in the analogy.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, I'll pull it up and I'll take a look at it. There's probably not much I can actually do given the fact that I'm not taking on new cases right now.
Well, maybe you could make a statement about it or do anything. That I plan on coming to the Capitol at some point and passing out my jury. And there's also another bill people are interested, Senate Bill 874. The gentleman passed away over here at Lamar, Missouri, and it is the citizens' right to convene a grand jury. I don't know if but he was a Republican. He passed away. He was running for congressman. He was running for Congress, and it got into committees and stuff. But I was the chief petitioner to have Lexington, Missouri audited back in 2016, the town where Josh Hawley's from. Josh Hawley refused to answer a sunshine request about the police chief who, after the audit, quit being the police chief and went out to work for the highway patrol on I-70, giving truck drivers tickets for bad tires. And the citizens' petition for a grand jury would give citizens the right in a county to take up a position, present it to a presiding judge, and say, we think so-and-so is this or that. And it's a really important bill for the people. Again, like, people want accountability. People want, want to be able to take part in. They've trained everyone, I don't want to do jury duty. It's a crazy thing. See, you were fearful of who controlled the jury, that it would be, you would win an appeal, but you would lose to a picked jury because the people perish for lack of knowledge. They're not educated that it's a good thing to hang the jury. I was passing these flyers out on the square in Gainesville, Missouri, and this old man told me, he said, you know what, I was on a jury and everybody wanted to go to lunch. I thought the guy was innocent, and I went with everyone else so we could go to lunch. As an attorney, it's better that a guilty man would go free than an innocent man would ever go to prison. So I think if you took a stand for accountability, that no one else, and also the guy who's running against you, the attorney general, he had a guy that got out of jail. Missouri law says that if you're in jail and you're wrongly accused, you get $100 a day. After he got out of jail, he didn't apply for it. The Missouri attorney generals argued that he didn't ask for the money in time, so we're not going to give it to him. And they want to protect the state. The attorney general is not only supposed to, they so much argue, they protect the police, they protect the government. They are there to protect the citizens of Missouri. So, okay. I think, if you would get out there and speak on that, you could win some hearts and minds. And I saw you at Kenosha. Good on you. And I'm a really good man. I get called a lot of names. I'm called. They try to call me a racist because of my mailbox. I had in foreign aid, and it's okay to be a white guy, and it is. And people should be we just buried my sister. Died Monday. She was 51 years old. She died in Kansas City, and the guy that brought her down was a black guy. Awesome. They put the wrong vault in there. I had to call him. He came back to get her, and we put her in the hearse till they got another vault over. And it was, and he was really cool because while he waited around, we talked about. He showed me pictures of his family, and he says he doesn't support Black Lives Matter, burning down the cities and attacking people's business, and he's worked all of his life for his funeral home, and just a good man, and I gave him a 5-star review, and so That's what people want is accountability. If you could look at that unlawful use of
I'll take a look at it and
okay.
all right.
Thank
Well,
you so much,
for
Mr. McCloskey. I appreciate it greatly.